That's my home over there, by the way. This one here is Queen Anne's, just that beautiful geometric pattern. Oh, there's not much left of it, but you can see there was a fox here from that little dark black with the cherry pits and the blackberry seeds. It's a very distinctive fox dropping. I'm completely off grid and I have no electricity. You're welcome to step in. I can give you the grand tour in about 30 seconds. This is one of the best parts. Is not the house itself, but you know, this is my morning meditation. This is also on wheels. There's a film, an anime film, Howl's
Moving Castle.
Yeah. When I moved here, it's like opening these doors and then there's this whole other world out here. It's like every time it's a different scene. This is the morning view or the evening view or whatever view you like to take. And this is my neighbor across the meadow here. That's another little cob building, all earthen materials made from this earth. The straw and clay and sand of Lost Valley. Lost Valley. It's like a little village in the woods in a way. There's probably about 40 or so people living here now. We're all kind of committed to learning to live in greater harmony with one another and the earth around us. In those bushes there where the willows are, that's an outdoor bathing facility. Those gray panels there are passive solar, and that heats the hot water for the shower and the bathtub. You can see the solar panels over there. That's a little solar charging station, and we just run batteries, and it's also mobile, so if there's a power outage somewhere that our neighbors need an emergency, we've got a power bank ready to go. So most folks who are off-grid have generators or have solar or have some form of electricity. And I've gotten pretty used to living without electricity and generally much prefer it. Refrigeration is the tricky thing. So I have a cooler out on the porch. There you go. Old school.
This is a beautiful home. I love the all wood.
Yeah, so this is Kalakwati, the western red cedar. It's all hypoallergenic. We use rock wool for insulation and wood. There's not a whole lot more to it. There's Doug fir in the framing, cedar is the siding, interior and out, and exterior, and I got a great deal on some surplus lumber. And then we have oak countertops and maple cabinets. So there's some hemlock in here somewhere. Where is that? I don't remember. Anyway, simple design, wide open spaces, high ceiling. Yeah, there's not a whole lot I need. This is my, I just drew a sketch in a notebook and then I built this little model, and this is how I designed the home. And then my fiance and I finished building out the interior, doing the plumbing. It's actually wired for electricity in case I want to put a solar system in someday. Yeah. But I've recognized that, like, look how light it is, right? This is evening time. It'll get dark and I'll light a candle. And then I'll have this beautiful ambiance until I get sleepy. And then it's dark and I go to bed. It feels so good to have that natural light and natural rhythms. Oh, so they're doing some seed saving right now, harvesting some seed.
What are you collecting?
Camas seeds.
And why? Because there's a lot around. Why do you need to collect? Because
there's a lot around here.
Yeah, it's to keep the camas continuing. And as we're walking through, we're also shaking the seeds out and re-sowing for next year to add more abundance. And there's other places on the property that have less camas, so we get to collect them and spread them more. Camas is traditional foods of the Kalapuya indigenous peoples. They actually cultivated it. So this was, in theory, a cultivated camas meadow for them to eat it. And they eat the bulbs. and it takes a long process for them to cook. It's like a 24-hour slow bake. This whole meadow in the spring is purple, so the camas flowers are all purple and yellow. So this whole area is just like a purple camas meadow.
They're all dried out now. Now they're just like these little bell-shaped things, and they hold seeds. But they just opened, and we don't mow for the rest of the year because we wait for these to do this. Otherwise, they wouldn't produce seeds.
Did you know what camas was before?
Before living here, I'd never seen it before.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm from Wisconsin. So.
Okay.
The goal is to have more of it growing every year to keep cultivating this traditional foods.
Enjoy the camas harvest, or the camas seed harvest. It's not super common to have kitchens outside in this part of the world, but we have one here. So there's a propane stove. We have solar cookers, and we have hay boxes, which are super insulated. We also make use of propane and electricity and other things, food storage, refrigeration. That's where I keep my ice.
And this is something that people eat here a lot, or?
During the summer months, it's continual usage, you know. We also have a lodge kitchen, so we have community meals up there. The land itself was a Christian community in the 1970s. The cabins and lodge and basic infrastructure was built by that community. They went bankrupt and we bought the land in the late 1980s. Lost Valley, by the former owners, they clear-cut the forest and kind of just let it be. So most of our 87 acres is a naturally regenerating mixed conifer and deciduous forest. When you take a natural forest ecosystem, you eliminate all the diversity, and then you pack one species, in this case Douglas fir, the most common because it's the fastest growing, and so it's what the timber industry uses basically above everything else. What they tend to do is plant them really dense together. These are naturally regenerating, so they're a little bit thick, and we have thin, where you see how this is kind of more opened up.
Oh, yeah.
When the trees are planted so thick together, wildfire will come in, and wildfire has always been part of the fire ecology of the system. It keeps the forest healthy. We need fire, but in a system where you've taken away all the space, you have all the trees at an even age, they're all planted at the exact same time, then they grow up and the crowns are crowded together and the fire will just tear through those. So it comes much, much hotter, and then it burns out all the microorganisms in the soil, whereas if you have bigger, more healthy, mature, older trees, the fire is moving up above, it's not raising the ground so much, and it actually is giving enough heat for other species that allows, there's certain kind of pine trees, for instance, the cones won't open until they get hot enough. So you need fire for the cones to open and release their seed. People drive through here or they look down from the plane and it's like, oh, it's all forested. And it's like, no, 97% of what was forest is now a tree farm. To an untrained eye, it's just green. But you start looking, it's like you go into a diverse forest ecosystem, there are dozens of different conifers, dozens of different deciduous, as well as every other shrub and plant and herb, you know, all the different layers. There's just an immense amount of diversity that is eliminated from transitioning a forest into a tree plantation. So most of our 87 acres is a naturally regenerating mixed conifer and deciduous forest. Another big component is the oak savanna, which is a rare and endangered habitat in the Pacific Northwest. It used to be a very dominant habitat, but the impact of agriculture and the timber industry has been pretty prolific. So we're really working to restore and retain the savanna that we have. And we do some of that with fire. We actually just did a burn of this meadow season before last. So we are, managing it to keep it an open pace, again, conserving and preserving the oak savanna habitat. So in the late fall after the rains, or in the early spring when the ground's still quite wet, when the sun comes out, it gives us the opportunity to just dry the grasses enough that you can light fire without any danger of it getting out of hand. It'll just burn the grasses back, which is really refreshing for the land itself to have that fire burn through. So it's knowing when and how to work with fire. Obviously, we do a lot of biochar generation, cleaning out and thinning our forest and to make a healthier, more vital ecosystem, and to capture that carbon and return it to the earth through the process of biochar production. This is an area where you can see where we did some thinning to allow more light into the forest, and these will burn in the fall. Again, put the carbon back down. You can kind of contrast that with an area here where we haven't been able to do any management. It grows in a little bit thick and dense. Like this is an area where we actually do want to do some management. So what we would do is come in here and just saw it up or clip it up and just chop it and drop it onto the ground. So again, just taking the carbon out of the air and returning it to the soil. That's part of mimicking burning the landscape, which is more what the native people would do. So we do actually do some fire ecology projects. We have codes and restrictions that limit how much we can do of that. We are working to get toward the place where we can actually just let the fire burn through, but we're not there yet. And that's part of the backlash. It's like the timber industry created this extremely treacherous situation with fire by really unintelligent logging practices, not just the logging, but the replanting. Like I say, the way too thick, way too crowded together, one species, one age, hot fires burning close to the ground, killing the microorganisms. And then people's homes get lost and people freak out and it's like, oh, fire. We need to do everything we can to stop it. So when we actually need to be bringing fire back to create healthy ecosystems, and that's if you use fire intelligently, then you create a healthy system that when these wildfires catch, they're not so blazing hot, they're not so wild and out of control, and you can actually keep your home safe around them. Native people live with the fire. This whole continent was tended and cared for by people who were living in right relationship with it. This is oak savanna that we're walking through now. So these are obviously more mature, but this is the habitat that we're trying to really preserve and...
Oh, really? So this is an idea to get a lot of it back to this?
Yeah. Yeah, this is what we're working on. Like this used to be, the whole Willamette Valley used to be oak savanna before we came and cut it down and put tree plantations in. So, you had rolling grasslands and hills, and that was part of fire ecology, right? You burn out all the new growth so the oaks stay healthy. We would thin out a forest that became unnatural because of human influence and try to bring it back into a more natural state. Here you can see this as an area that has been cleared.
They're clearing because?
Well, for different reasons. You see, these are oak trees. These are, again, the Quercus garryana, or the Oregon white oak, and that's an endangered habitat. In terms of forest ecology and diversity, this is what we're controlling for. So the shade of the Douglas fir, because they grow so thick and fast, they'll just shade out everything below them. So we're opening it up. You can see these piles of charcoal around here. So this is a biochar pit. We load the wood in such a way as to basically char it so it's reducing the amount of oxygen so that the carbon isn't released into the atmosphere, but it's contained in the wood, not releasing it into the air and then putting it back into the soils for other things to grow. And again, it's a food forest.
So a lot of these plants you see all around us are food and medicine. This is a hazelnut right here. We've got tons of wild hazel. Those are cascara berries. The berries are delicious. You can use the bark on a pharmaceutical grade laxative. Back in here, this is an Oregon white oak. We've planted a whole bunch of California black oak in here as well. And the acorns are another staple food source for indigenous peoples, but also our old European ancestors. You just have to know how to process them. Oh, and this is a St. John's wort, by the way, which is another very popular antidepressant, which you can use for skin ailments as well. This is one of the tastiest berries. This will be a beautiful bright red. It'll form a little thimble, so we call it thimbleberry. These beautiful little flowers down here are salal berries. They have like 5 times the antioxidants of blueberries. They're super dense in nutrients, and this is just full. Like you see this whole field is full of the thimbleberry and salal berry. We've got all the hazelnuts and the acorns, all the different berries. All of this is coming in to feed the deer and the rabbit and the fox, and you know. In here you can see we've got these swales dug in. The idea is that we're slowing water movement through the land. We want to retain as much water as possible. So we encourage it to gather in certain areas. This is a human-created pond. Then we planted the willows in here. If you can imagine, this is just a blank slate of just a field. All the water is going to dissipate, and we're trying to hold it in. We put this pond in, and we actually have a whole swale system that goes through here, and our frog population has increased dramatically. So they have a habitat that wasn't here for them before. So there's more water on the land, there's more plants that can feed from it, and obviously the butterflies, insect population increase. Oh, birds too. You know, birds are a great indicator species for the health of an ecosystem, and we have such a wide diversity of bird species on this land because, you know, if you go out again, everything up here, if you look at a satellite view, it's like tree plantation and then pasture lands and people's yards. They have their grass, they might have a few ornamental plants, but having this deciduous, conifer, mixed forest, and just all the different species of plants have really attracted a lot of different species of birds because they have all the different habitats they're looking for that used to occur all across this country and now are like only a very few places. And this is one of those magical spots where we've been able to protect this little piece. And so we, you know, all the animals come here. Right now we're not seeing a whole lot of wildlife because we're just having a conversation. When you go out alone and you're moving very mindfully through the system, there's a technique we call fox walking. So you lay your foot down very gently and roll it over. And as you move this way, you can stop anywhere in your motion. So like if you're seen, you have your balance set in such a way that you don't move and the animals look at you. They don't see any movement and they relax. And then you can kind of step forward. You can also, like, when you're moving, you feel the earth with your foot. So if there's like a little thorn there, you just readjust and then you shift your weight over. This is actually kind of fun if you want to play for a second. You can try just walking with your hands in your ears. And if you just walk normally, you hear this like rumbling, crashing sound with every footstep. Because it's like, we just do controlled falling. That's how we walk in this world today. But if you shift into a fox walk, the sound that you make just kind of goes silent. If you do this again with your ears closed, it's like you can't actually hear when your foot touches the earth anymore. So just something to play with. There's all kinds of interesting off paths here that we could explore. Yeah, let's. I guess you all have shoes, so. I'm pretty good with this sort of thing. It's pretty thorny at the very start of this, but just to give you a little picture of what a little bit of the off the beaten path looks like here. Yeah.
I don't know how you do that thing. Yeah.
Calluses. This is another beautiful medicinal plantain. This is a broadleaf plantain.
So would you have planted that like some of these?
No, these ones, actually one of the colloquial terms is white man's footprint. It just sort of followed the pioneers across the continent and dropped around. So it's similar to the prunella here, and that can be used for a lot of different skin conditions. It's also a very nutritive herb, so you can make cold infusions and you chop it up and let it sit overnight in water, and then you drink it, and you get all kinds of good nutrient and a mucilaginous layer over your gut. So if you have an irritated bowel, which this is one way to treat it. So this is the backside of the little Tinyville South. Where this RV is a new tiny home building project, so he's just getting started. Are you familiar with Beltane? This is a maypole. This is from our last Beltane celebration.
Bye, honey. I'll pick you up soon.
Beltane is a very common Celtic and now pagan / neo-pagan celebration.
Yeah, tighten it into the center as you go.
I'm just putting a band.
It's something I like to celebrate, the seasonal celebrations around the equinoxes and the solstices and such, partially because it's one of those many things that we've become deeply disconnected from in terms of acknowledging and recognizing how the seasons shift over time. And one of the key things there is that we in the modern world, human society, especially North America in particular, but people are moving all over the place. And we used to be, more or less like we might have a nomadic route, but we knew where we were and we stayed within walking distance of where we were. And now we're like flying all over the world, and it's like you don't get to recognize those patterns and shifts and changes over time because you haven't stayed with one spot. So personal experience in living in this land, I've done my share of traveling, but I've always kind of come back here, and so I've gotten to watch shifts and changes over time. This is our sacred yurt. It's just a yurt, but we call it a sacred yurt because the sound just amplifies through here. And it sounds, whoa, like whatever sacred spaces that we want to create. This is a nice, cozy, and you got the fire in the winter time. It's one little community space. And obviously the view when you come out. This is one of my favorite signs. Connect. And you can feel that connection to the earth when you take, you guys should take your shoes off. I'm not gonna, but it feels good to stand on the earth and you start feeling all the contours. But not only is it just like a sensorial, muscular experience, like in terms of the contours of the earth and just feeling it, it's also neurological, the nerves, all the systems of the body, but all the capillary beds of the blood and then the nerve endings. It's like you touch the earth, and the more you practice this, the more it's like, for me at this point, it just feels like there's like this magnetic connection, and it just brings me down to it just feels so good. That's the thing, is it just sorry. I just got to say that though, that take a breath and connect. That's what we're talking about. It's just pause. So I was born about 8 miles over the hills in the town of Cottage Grove, but my parents were part of an ecovillage project that was 1,200 acres. A lot of the land that I grew up on, it was kind of what supported me as a child. We all become who we are based on the environment that raises us. And that was actually what brought me here around 2005. Going back to the meadows and to the forest is where I could feel safe and held and taken care of. I got to watch those forests that supported me as a child be just completely destroyed by the timber industry. And so that was part of the like really visceral experience of what it is to be in deep relationship with a land that is just devastated. So this, you can take a whiff.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Isn't that great?
What is that?
Incense cedar. This, by the way, is also a really lovely smell.
That's different.
Very different.
Yeah, it's different. It's
Yeah.
like almost more lemony or something.
Yeah, it has kind of a citrus.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, and like a citrus, it also has the vitamin C.
Oh, wow.
So the fresh needles. So your nose is telling you information, you know, that's like, there's something familiar here to me. And maybe your body needs that, so who doesn't need a little extra vitamin C? At any rate, this one is the Douglas fir. So this is our creek garden, and where we currently host the Native Plants Nursery. Evergreen, huckleberries, blueberries, strawberries, thimbleberries. Would you like a black cap raspberry?
Oh, thank you.
But we also have the nut trees. We can see what we can find. Oh, that's a mister bell.
Wow.
Could start misting. These are all the strawberries. These look like windflower and bracken fern. These looks like sorrel, which is just cooking herbs. But maybe you would.
Me,
Maybe.
just as a kid.
Yeah.
With the lemongrass kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We used to pick it.
So that's wood sorrel. This is all the plants that we're growing for sharing with the wider community. You know, we do seed swaps and more currants, more thimbleberry. Those look like grapes. Huh. I mean, they are grapes. I'm not aware of native grapes around here, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe there's something I haven't learned yet. So we have all kinds of fruit trees. This is more a vegetable garden. You know, you can obviously recognize the broccoli in here, and chard and kale and peas and squash and artichokes. And these are burdock. Burdock root is really good for cold infusions for the intestinal tract. So lettuce and sunflowers, and this is a black locust here. Sometimes we have chickens, foxes feasted on these ones. That's kind of okay, because the idea is care for the earth, care for the people, and share the abundance are kind of three popular principles of permaculture. In growing food, we're restoring nutrients to the land. We're growing in such a way that it's building soil rather than tearing it down. There's a little fig tree growing up under all this cleaver, also known as bed straw, because you can use it to pack your pillow or make a bed out of. And it's medicinal in different ways, and you can make a substitute for coffee with the little seeds. So these are just, you know, what we call weeds, because they do like this, but they're not actually a problem. We just need to keep things in balance. So give this guy a little more sunshine so we can have some figs growing here too. These are all potatoes. But yeah, care for the earth, rebuilding the soils through the way that we harvest before we plant. So that like what we plant and how we plant is part of how we build the soils, but we also make like compost tea. And then sharing the abundance. We grow more than we need so that it's okay for the birds to come take some. And it's actually quite expensive to try to barricade everything from nature and protect it. If we just grow a little more, then we can afford to lose a little bit, and it's actually less expensive than paying for big fancy fences and electrical systems. This here is the Thuya plicata, western red cedar, or in one native language of this land, which is Chinook Wawa, is the Kalakwati. These ones have little butterflies. Little butterfly pattern.
Do you
is
do
what.
anything with this one?
Everything. This plant has many medicinal properties. Also, it's just great wood. You can split it. Native people here would build canoes, build baskets, and you can harvest it, and you don't need to cut the tree down. You can harvest planks off of the side of the tree and then let it regrow. But if you just take a strip up and down, then the tree will regrow that. And then you can use the strip of the inner bark I was just blown away when I first learned that. It's like, oh, you can actually harvest wood from a tree without cutting a tree down. So like we have this tree species here, Taxus brevifolia, which is the Pacific yew tree. Taxus is Taxol. Taxol is an anti-cancer drug.
Oh yeah.
They discovered that in the 80s. So when they discovered that you could make an anti-cancer drug from the bark of this tree, what did they do? They went and stripped the bark off of all the trees. Here's one here. They strip a ring around, strip all the bark. As soon as you close that ring around the tree, no nutrient, no water can come up, so they all die. This tree can grow to be thousands of years old. In modern terms, we call old growth, you know, like anything over 100 years. But this is a baby in the cycle of these trees' lives. From where we're standing here to the trunk of that tree, this could be one tree, one trunk. They grow enormous, but you never, very rarely come across any like that because what we did in the 80s. Just like this whole forest ecosystem of the Pacific Northwest, what wasn't oak savanna was ancient forest. Just down this slope here is what we call the grandmother maple. And since we're out here in the woods, we gotta at least say hello. Permaculture starts with observation. And when we come from a busy modern Western life, it's really hard to observe anything beyond our racing minds until we learn to calm that down. So this is another one of our classrooms, and this is another one of our teachers. Chich Uskan Stick. She's grandmother maple.
Oh, this is just huge.
Yeah,
How old do you think it is?
150 offhand. 150 to 200. So this is my friend Emily's former home. It's been vacant for a year or two.
Someone lives here?
Yeah.
No.
This is the door. It's kind of needs to be redone, but you know, you reweave some new material in there and it's fresh and you got your little shelter. Real simple.
So even in winter or just?
Yeah. I mean, well, she had another little hut that was a little bit more insulated for colder months. This is kind of what we would call rewilding, right? Just living off of the land as simply as possible. You know, running around barefoot like me. And that's not necessarily the goal. It's a fun side product of like deep nature connection. You start to just get a little more playful, start climbing trees. Starting with that kind of deeper self-attunement prepares us to observe. So when we go out in the woods, just like if you go with your friend, like kind of what we're doing right now, we're not really noticing a lot. If I'm pointing something out, we're talking about that, we're noticing that. But really, how many foxes did you see? You know, how many different species of birds did you hear, right? Where's the closest bird to you right now? They're a little bit further away right now, but I can hear them. And part of it is like we're making all this noise, so they're moving away from us. The point is, it's like we don't notice what's going on in the world around us because we're so up here. And even if we're alone, if we haven't learned to drop below our thoughts and drop below the frenetic energy of our busy lives, we don't notice how plants are moving in relationship to one another. We don't notice how the water is flowing across the land. Yesterday, we hiked from the bridge to this spot up the creek. You can imagine this trail. It just keeps going up and up and up and up. This is kind of basic permaculture. But so we start with a deepening attunement and awareness through our minds, our bodies, and then we go out and we sit and then we observe and we start recognizing patterns. And from recognizing patterns, we learn how to plant, how to harvest, how to grow, when things are ready and how ready they are for how much harvesting. There's just a lot going on that we really need to attune to.
So this is your daily life, being out here among trees and...
My daily life is varied. And my daily commute to the office is that walk through the meadow. That's pretty great. I got to go into town a couple times a month to get groceries for, grapefruits and things that we don't grow out here. But other than that, I really don't like to leave the land.
This is just my favorite part of the place.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah. You obviously see I don't have a television in here. I haven't watched television in many years because how we wake up in our day, if we're in a box in the city somewhere versus under the trees in a meadow, it's all shaping and informing, and we can be more or less present for it. Yeah, and like I said before, there's the fire pit for the evening fires under the stars.